right. Hello, Steph. How are you? Of
Gil, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
course. It's so great to see you. Welcome to FYI.
Woohoo!
It's been a little while. You are doing some cool new things. I'm doing some cool new things. For those who are listening who might not know you super well, I think it would be lovely to share a little bit about your background and your expertise and how you got to where you are. This is a podcast, so we have unlimited space on the internet. So however long you want to go is totally fine by me.
Well, do we want to start back in the 80s at the beginning of my career in my checkered past, in which not only did I work in television news production, but I was the publicist for the Sands Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City, which has since been imploded. So, not my doing. It's not.
I was going to say, so your claim to fame is you led to the implosion of a hotel. Is that your career highlight then?
Let's say it that way and see what happens. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Oh, so after you led to the implosion of a hotel, which is going to be the
Mhm.
now common theme of this conversation, what happened then? What brought you into the higher ed sphere?
What else have you blown up? I went back home to Pennsylvania to work for an ad agency, and a bank merger put the five most recent hires at that little agency out of work. So I found myself wondering what I should do with my life. And a friend, a connection from my alma mater, Bloomsburg University. Go Huskies! Woof woof. Um, was working at Wilkes University, and she let me know about a position in then called university relations. So back in the day when on certain campuses it wasn't okay to use the word marketing, and
Mhm.
and that was one of them for a short time. And yeah, so I found my way into higher ed at a small private university in northeastern Pennsylvania, where I'm from. And I finally realized that it was important to me to work toward something that was good, that I needed to work with people who were inherently smart, valuing education, something that had been really important to me, is still important to me in my household. And it was just fun. It's just college and university, it's just fun,
Mhm.
right? I'm headed back to the University of Montana, where I've been for the past 2.5 years, and going for homecoming. And I was just working with my social media manager. I said, okay, we're going to flip it, and you're going to be my boss and tell me where I need to be for homecoming and what am I shooting video or taking pictures of. So excited to go and put all my Grizz gear on and be a part of campus.
Very fun. Well, speaking of Grizz gear, for those who are watching this episode on YouTube, I am holding my super amazing University of Montana coffee mug that
Yay!
I received from the amazing team. I also have a sticker on my laptop, but if I tried to show you that, I would break some sort of connection. But lovely branding, lovely team, lovely work there. It's funny that you bring up the early days of university relations and marketing being a bad word. Last season, we had Teresa Valerio Parrott from TVP Communications join our lovely podcast. And we had a great conversation about that kind of topic. So we'll put the link for that in the episode notes. But I think I'd love your perspective on some of that before we get into the true topic of today's
Yeah,
conversation, which is personalization.
yeah.
But like, what has I'd love the big picture thought about why marketing was such a bad word and a bad thing in the early days of marketing in higher ed, and now it's kind of like my philosophy in life with marketing has been from what my marketing 310 professor said in college. First day of class was marketing is everything, and everything is marketing except accounting. And I've added to that over the years that if you do too much marketing with accounting, you get into a lot of trouble. That's why, right? But if somewhere along the lines, marketing became everything and everything became marketing, And I'd love you've been through some of that transformation in the higher ed space. What has led to that, other than just a general understanding that marketing is awesome?
Well, there are so many entry points into explaining how that was and why it was. I think, the simple one is that when higher ed started, it was special and important and valued and became a little full of itself. And so the mindset around the need for, I'm going to go a little step further than marketing, to have sales and marketing be a part
Mm-hmm.
of an administrative functional unit was distasteful, because we have built the academy and therefore you must be desiring to be here with us.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than an inclusive embracing mindset, a marketing, getting the right students that fit to be successful at our institution, it was more of a gatekeeping, exclusionary
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. um, and then many, 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 many more colleges and universities sprung up, and then the for-profit instances started to arrive, and then the different modalities of delivery became apparent, and suddenly customers or consumers had choices with higher ed, and it wasn't so precious. It wasn't so, no, I know I'm going to get in trouble. It is precious. It's really important. People need education at all levels of their life all the time. I mean, maybe that's even why we need podcasts, right, Gil? So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Anyway,
Yeah,
I think
and
that was
I think to your point, it's the perception of how precious higher ed is has been drawn into question, and it's part of what I call the annual admissions hype machine. Right? There's the dropping of the U.S. news rankings, and then there's the articles about the cost of education, and there's the articles about the value and the outcomes that are all usually written by people who have graduated from very nice institutions, right? And then there's the questioning of the validity of those comments because of those. And it's like clockwork with the higher ed process. But I think every year that cycle has gone, it knocks at the luster of higher ed a little bit more, right? And that is why marketing then becomes important, is because of the positioning and the framing of the product, right? And that product is still very valuable. The form that product has taken has evolved and changed, and so marketing is the messenger around a lot of that. Is that fair?
Yeah, it is. And I want to just divert for a moment back to the concept that the the real value in marketing is in helping consumers find the mode of education that is going to work for them. Because when we look at all of the backlash against higher ed around, oh, it's so expensive. And you know what? It is.
Mm-hmm.
And my kid, has this much debt and doesn't have a job or is working minimum wage. That's hard. And we need to own that. But if we don't really have a strong connective tissue between marketing and student retention, because we're marketing to and successful in enrolling the right students, I have issues with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have to market to the students who can be successful. And for an open access university like the University of Montana, we have to also demonstrate and prove that we have tools, resources, people, whole buildings, incredible digital assets to support students who come to college maybe not fully prepared to be there,
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that they can find their way.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that is, you mentioned, is the audience. There's different audiences that marketing serves, and when we're in the context specifically of student recruitment, that audience demographic has changed, right? And I think that one of the things that it's interesting to observe is how institutions evolve in that respect, right? Like you mentioned, getting the right students at the institution who are going to be successful, that profile has continued to change because outside factors the institution is now having to adjust for, right? And so it's not just about, and this is say, saying everything that's old is new again, right? It's not just about getting students to your institution, but it is also about effectively supporting them once they're there. And this was a lesson that our colleagues in the international recruitment side of the desk knew for years, right? Is you bring in a bunch of students from all these different countries. They're helping you to hit your strategic enrollment priorities and your net revenue and everything else because of those pieces. But if you don't have the infrastructure in place to actually support those students, now they're going to leave and they're going to tell all their friends to never go to that school. And now you're in an even worse spot. The same goes for bringing in transfer students or bringing in first generation underrepresented students, right? There's a need in the context here. And I think that's, something that we oftentimes forget is it's not just an effective tagline and a solid communications plan, but it's an institutional priority to actually deliver on the promises that marketing is making.
Yeah. Oh, times 10, 100%. I love that marketing has evolved since 1991 in higher ed, and that I can go to my campus, I can go to any campus and have a meaningful conversation and help move the needle forward in marketing. I also think it's really crucial that we recognize that as consumers, we have, thanks to the digital age, we have become so much more savvy and have so many choice sets that just didn't even occur to us, to me, back in the 80s when I was making my own higher ed choice. It's a great time. It's a hard time. It's complicated. But we have tools, we have resources, and I've got a team at Montana that's just so much momentum behind them and so much enthusiasm, and I think most importantly, curiosity about what could we do. And I hope I'm imparting, as their leader in this way, some fearlessness about trying to break stuff and trying, going back to blowing up the sands. Again, not my fault. Blowing up conventions in communication and marketing, and the engagement between marketing and sales on a campus, marketing and admissions on a campus, and what that relationship can and should look like. It's delightful. I feel very lucky.
Awesome. Well, in true Stephanie Geyer form, the first chapter, for those who have been listening to the FYI podcast for this season, is typically focused mostly on the guest and their background. And we spent the entire time talking about marketing, which is in your DNA, right? So if there's a picture of marketing in an encyclopedia, if an encyclopedia even exists anymore, but if there's a picture of marketing on Wikipedia, that picture is Stephanie Geyer. So we're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, we're gonna talk about the topic du jour, which is that of personalization. So stick with us. We'll be right back.
Discover future applicants, delight enrolled students, and amplify fundraising performance with our Cadence engagement platform's live chat and chatbot solutions. Designed exclusively for higher ed by higher ed professionals, Cadence helps you engage your audiences with the perfect balance of AI and personal connection. We leverage proactive outreach and anticipate common roadblocks, knowing the most significant decisions often start with the smallest conversations. Our powerful AI ensures instant support and is smart enough to know exactly when to hand off to a staff member. And if nobody is available, it allows for easy follow-up. Effortlessly integrated with your website, we proudly feature an industry-leading 85% self-service rate. It's never been easier to make every message count.
All right, so we are back. Thank you again for that insight into your background, and always grounding our conversations in the world of marketing. And I think one of the things we wanted to talk about today was specifically around that of personalization. So there have been a number of articles published over the last few months in Inside Higher Ed and others. One of which I wrote, selfish cheap plug on the call to action marketing blog. Speaking of TVP communication and our friends there, they help run it. About the importance of communication or of personalization in communication and on websites. Spoiler alert for anyone, I think we generally all agree that, and this is total cliche at this point, but dear first name does not necessarily count as personalization anymore. That's table stakes. That is a bare minimum expectation of students and family members and anyone when communicating with them, right? So I think then the challenge, Steph, is all right, everyone agrees, and yet most people, that's kind of where it stops. And the question is why, right? And so what are the things that get in people's way when it comes to personalizing content? And most importantly, I think what people are listening for is what are the ways that we should be thinking about personalizing experiences as students specifically, but we can dabble in other audiences, are engaging with us on, say, our website and our other properties.
Ooh, big question.
That was like
so
5 questions, by the way.
like
So
5 questions. I liked all of them. I'm going to answer 3 that you didn't ask.
cool. Perfect.
Here's how to start to think about personalization in your student markets and for student recruitment communication. You've got to know and understand and have great curiosity about and empathy for your users and understand where they're different and where they're the same. So walking through user journey process is a really important step for us in knowing what's important for them to be recognized as a unique person coming into the process, and what is kind of one size fits all. So we've been doing a lot of user journey work, thinking about our traditional undergrad markets, our important online markets, our in-state versus out-of-state versus WUI, Western University exchange markets. The University of Montana serves the world from certificate programs. You could get your CDL. You could learn how to do some welding, which I'm personally interested in, and march all the way through every other possible degree level, all the way to PhD, Doctor of Pharmacy, Doctor of Physical Therapy, or become a lawyer. So when we think about personalization, what's important to a prospective dual enrollment student and what we should personalize for in that instance might be really different than how we would personalize for somebody coming from out of state to be a part of our law school. I really like that approach because it's really easy to get really excited about personalization and making a user experience so infinitesimally targeted.
Mm-hmm.
The machination to, oh, hey, Gil, we know that you're in Maine and we know that you like hockey and we know that fill in the blank. And we're only going to give you content that looks like stuff that we know about you. And that is a mistake. If you go too narrowly, then you are leaving aside the opportunity for exploration for the user's own curiosity, or maybe their decision influencer, think parent, opportunity to explore other things on their behalf. So I think that's really important. The reality is the barrier for personalization is quickly not becoming functionality. There are so many great vendors and resources that can deliver on personalized experience for users in digital. The reality is, how much content can you develop and curate and present and measure and test and edit? How much? I don't know.
Right.
The deeper you go, in personalizing based on, different segments, academic program interest. But boy, that seems obvious, right? But that's one that we're still swinging at. Why? We've got 147, or is it 174 academic offerings at the University of Montana. That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yep. Yep.
Right. So we have chosen to start with, obviously, student market. Are you thinking about coming for dual enrollment? Are you thinking about coming as a traditional just out of high school undergrad? Are you transferring? Are you going to be a online student like Maddie Geyer right upstairs here in my own household? Are you looking at a grad program? Are you an adult who's never been to college? You've got to know these things first before you start that conversation, and then you can start building blocks in. Location is super important for us. Location is important for every public funded institution because there is a pricing variable.
Mhm.
And so understanding if they are located in Missoula in a kind of 5-county surround, or are they on the eastern part of the state, is important for us in presenting cost, value, scholarship, opportunity detail as well.
I think you covered a lot there, and I think there was one area where I want to really double down on, and that's before we started the episode today, we were having a brief conversation around the hardest part in doing this, and it's definitely the time commitment that it takes to create the volume of content that you can have for all of those variables. And I think that is why so many institutions struggle with personalized content, is because they're already short half an admissions staff. They're hiring for a position that's been open for 8 months. They have to travel to visit their high schools and go to their college fairs. They're doing online events. They're replying to emails. They're going to meetings around campus. So owning the creation of that content is extremely difficult, and driving it forward is extremely difficult because that's why Dear First Name is like the bar so many people get over, right? Because putting in the merge field in some CRM platforms can be hard enough, right? And so what are your tips for prioritizing the elements that could be personalized? And I know it's not a one size fits all every institute, because then all we're doing is we're creating big box store solutions that are cookie cutter for everyone else, which everyone complains about all the time, right? So we don't want to make cookie cutter recommendations, but if there were some key elements that institutions should really explore, what would you recommend? I mean, you mentioned for state institutions, in-state, out-of-state, big one, right? That makes sense. What are others that you think would be lower lying fruit that people might be able to create programs off of or content off of?
Yeah, here's a variation on the location that we did right out of the gate that I'm super proud of. And just when you think about it, makes so much sense. So location relative to cost, but location relative to the backyard effect. So in the great city of Missoula, we have a bunch of high schools, one of which is like a second away from our campus. So Hellgate High School. We were building the homepage of our umontana.edu admissions microsite web experience, and we had a section called Explore Missoula. I say have and had because we realized that telling someone from Hellgate High School to explore Missoula is dumb.
Yep.
It's dumb. That's a dope slap right there. Like, why would I think that somebody from Hellgate High School needs to double down on exploring their town? No, what they need is a view into refreshing, updating, making more broad and accurate their understanding about how going to the university in their backyard is going to get them out into the world. Because their experience on our campus, coming to great concerts, going to the homecoming parade, all that stuff probably doesn't really indoctrinate them into the amazing honors programs that we have, our global leadership initiative, our study abroad, or the fact that in wider Montana, we have a biostation at Flathead Lake, or we have our own forest. We're our own ranch. I mean,
Mhm.
you won't be stuck in Missoula if you go to the University of Montana. And that's a message distinction based on location that was really fun to think about. So sure enough, Explore Missoula, telling outsiders all of the great things about that particular
Mhm.
town, that region of Montana, super fun to do too, and important. But talking to our backyard kids, that felt like a really lucky moment of, oh, here, this is a way that we can
Yep.
personalize.
And I think that's a great point and a good reminder that, especially for the in-state, out-of-state, or just the location-based component of all of this, is it's, if Deer First Name isn't the bar, pricing is not the only bar for those sorts of elements, right? It's the messaging has to be different, because for many students, it's not just the price tag. Price is a huge driver. We acknowledge that, and it's got to be a part of the conversation. But just pointing to what pricing table they go to is not the level of personalization. It
No.
goes, again, marketing goes back to the messaging component, and the positioning component around that. And so I think there's a very important piece there. I'd love to talk a little about we were talking earlier about the, marrying the online personalization and the in-person personalization. And we had conversations about campus visit programs, and you mentioned, like, another area of personalization is status of where they are in the application process. If they're a prospective student, right, the messaging you send to an admitted student is different than what you send to a sophomore in high school, right? And so I'd love to kind of understand your thinking and your thought process around some of that personalized experiences in the offline world in combination with online.
Well, it starts with the fact that we launched a new brand about a year and a half ago. And a really important part of the team, there it is, that supports that brand, I'll say development, because we had a really strong launch, but no brand should stay in place as it is launched for very long.
Mm-hmm.
Karen Schlater and Andy Chapman on our team are all about brand experience, and that experience of what it's like to be on our campus and be a part of it. We had such an amazing time in yield season. We don't do deposit, but we do commitment on May 1st.
Mm-hmm.
And we were encouraging through our social channels, the great Emma Dorman on my team, getting students who'd been accepted to post on our social channels. And one young man had a t-shirt made, and I'm not going to quote it, but it said something less than affirming about a competing institution in our colors and very much with our,
Yep.
and we thought, wow, that's interesting. A little bit more appropriate and charming. One of the design elements that's part of our great brand is something called the Clark Fork Wave. The Clark Fork River runs through campus, and so we have beautiful wave-like elements in a lot of our digital stuff, our print stuff, and probably on a whole bunch of other mugs and swag too. There it is. So
For the podcast listeners, you're not getting the full experience. I recommend going to this timestamp on the YouTube channel and seeing. I keep showing off my Montana mug and all the branding, so that's what we keep talking about.
So a young woman went to a nail salon and had them replicate the Clark Fork wave on her nails, and then I took a picture holding her. I'm a Grizz.
That's epic. Yeah.
Yeah. So cheers to the nail tech who.
That reminds me, total sidebar, but that reminds me when I was a kid and I lived in Colorado at the time where you are. And I remember when the Colorado Rockies first came out in 1993. all the rage was all the kids would go get their haircut at Supercuts, and they do the buzz cut along the side with the mountain range across the back of your head. And that was all the rage. So what you got to do is get that wave in haircuts as a marketing ploy, is get people to do it down the side or something like that. Might be something. Maybe I'll do that for the next podcast. I'll go get a haircut ahead of time.
I'm headed back to campus here next week, and maybe my haircut that I'm having before I go back to campus includes.
There you go. Just a little short side here. Yeah, make it work.
Mm-hmm.
Make it work.
Mm-hmm. Boy, that would be, maybe that's a career enhancing move instead of a career limiting move.
It's not a face tattoo. It's a haircut. So you're fine.
Excellent.
So I feel like there's, I think if we could boil it down to the key recommendations for folks when it comes to the bars of personalization, it's obviously go above dear first name and go above pricing variables for in-state, out-of-state when you're a public institution, clearly. But what's a good kind of just philosophical approach for institutions to really take when it comes to the level of commitment and effort that they need, understanding limitations of time, budget, people, etc. What should their true north be when it comes to creating these experiences for their audiences?
3 things. What matters to the user? What can you sustain? And what can you measure? You got to have all 3. If it doesn't matter to the user, then it's going to fall flat and it's not going to matter. If you can't sustain the content, the personalized experience across an enrollment cycle that for certain markets could last a week and other markets could last years, if you can't sustain it, don't do it. And if you can't measure it, don't do it. Because if you can't measure it, then you don't know if it's working or if it's hurting you. That's it.
And if you can measure it, you're going to know what things are not sustainable, and you're going to know what does matter to your audience, right? So at minimum, I feel like that's the most important element, is the measurement component, because if you can't measure it, then it doesn't matter, right? And you won't be able to communicate if it matters. And that's a whole time. If there's 2 topics of marketing related podcasts that I think we're going to have for the next ever, is personalization matters and measuring matters. And we can have a whole separate follow-up specifically on measuring of effort and content.
You know what? I'd like to book that for like exactly a year from now, because we launched the UMontana site in February, and then G4, the latest Google Analytics version, appeared for us on July 1st. We were ready, and thanks to some great partnerships, we have some really sexy Looker Studio dashboards behind both of our URLs. I'm still sorting that out, and we're still building onto those, because GA4 is, I'm not gonna lie, it's a little clunky. I don't love it. I don't love it, but I love my Looker Studio dashboard, so I'm okay for right now. And a year from now, I'm going to have a lot of mouthy things to say about what has worked for us in personalization.
We will book it. We will put it on. I'll talk to the Mongoose team, and we'll say, hey, sign us up. We'll see you in a year on that topic. But before a year from now, we're going to take a break. We'll come back. We got a couple more items we're going to talk about the future, and maybe we'll outline the conversation we're going to have a year from now and say, these are the most important things. So stick with us. We will be right back.
Thoughtfully nurture applicants, personalize retention efforts, and exceed fundraising goals with our Cadence Engagement Platform's text messaging solutions. Designed exclusively for higher ed by higher ed professionals, Cadence helps you engage your audiences with the perfect balance of AI and personal connection. We leverage an intuitively designed interface and easy-to-use texting templates so you can have targeted conversations or scale up to expand your reach. Our powerful smart messaging can respond automatically, exactly how you would. And to measure progress, track your campaigns with unparalleled reports and analytics. Effectively meet your community where they are as we proudly feature an industry-leading 95% read rate within 3 minutes. It's never been easier to make every message count.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We're here with Stephanie Geyer from the University of Montana, and just had a really great conversation about personalization. And we laid down a challenge that a year from now, we're going to have a follow-up episode about this episode, which I can guarantee you when we have the follow-up episode, we will link to this episode in the episode notes. And so we're going to be in this like vortex of FYI podcast linking. It's going to be great. Maybe we'll even edit this post to link to that episode, and it'll just be like inception of podcast listening. But anyway, what we wanted to talk about, and what we want to talk about a year from now, is measuring what matters, right? And so, if you mentioned if things are not sustainable and not measurable and they don't matter to your audience, then personalization doesn't mean anything, right? And so what are some of the things that you think we would want to look towards and look for as we're building out those fancy dashboards so that we are tracking and measuring what matters?
So I think engagement, of course, always matters. And if we are personalizing at the funnel stage, we'll want to see what kind of website experiences, digital experiences users have had in terms of moving them to the next step. So inquiries moving to register for a campus visit, exploring academic programs, maybe looking at the virtual tour, booking that tour, looking at the application process, and then completing that application. And then on the yield side, we've been working on the yield side in personalization now. So looking at engagement with something that we have called Bear Tracks, which is the kind of to-do list function resource that keeps them getting their immunizations in and doing all the odds and ends that they have to do to complete enrollment. So I'm interested to see at what stage, what did we dish up for them to do, how many of them did it, and then what happened, and then what happened, and then what happened. I'm also curious, I think it's as important for us to look at losses as it is successes. So where we are doing marketing strategies, paid strategies, and got people in the door, maybe through a campaign around an academic program cluster or something like that, what didn't happen after their experience with a landing page? Did they ignore the video? Did they stop the video from running? Did they ignore all of the calls to action? Or did they show up anyway, but circumvented the web experience that we delivered to them? And then we find out later that they've come in through another channel. That's important information as well.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just saying, you can't win everything. And so being brave and looking at where something fell down, where something didn't work as well as you expected, it's everything. It's more important than just celebrating the wins.
Yeah. Definitely more important. And I think a lot of times in marketing, we got our rose-colored glasses on, and if there aren't positive vanity metrics to point to, then that's when everybody gets uncomfortable, right? But it's finding the uncomfortable components, because that's the areas you need to dive in and fix, right? And if we can find those areas where we're underperforming, even if, let's say you hit your enrollment targets, everything's lovely, everything's amazing, but you can still identify areas where maybe there's a specific audience or demographic or major or whatever that is underperforming. That's your area to focus on and improve for the following year, because that's, there's always opportunities to be better. And I think what you're, and again, I mentioned in the last segment that the two topics of higher ed marketing are will forever be around the personalization component, and will be around measuring and the reporting component. And I think with in higher ed specifically, it's good with admissions specifically, I should say, it's going to be around, source attribution and what's working when. And 10, 15 years ago, it was the basic table stakes metric was Well, what was the first source of contact of that student? Oh, well, we bought a lot of names, so that source generated a lot of inquiries, but we didn't look at what touch points were actually working and what was actually the area that was influencing behavior. And that's what modern technology allows us to be a lot more precise about, is what's not what sources are generating the most volume, but what sources are driving the most impact. And that's the reality, is where things are going to go, especially with, better personalization on your website, different sources where students are gathering. You mentioned they stay off your radar and they come in through a different source, or they get connected. Direct admission is going to be something a year from now that's going to matter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these are all things that are going to make it be an important piece of this conversation, and say, we got to look at all of this and see where we can improve, because there's going to be a lot of methods that students engage with us that we haven't had before, that this is our baseline benchmark year, and we have to go from there.
Do you remember the quaint practice of including the question, how did you hear about blah, blah, blah university on your inquiry form?
Yep.
Remember that? Yeah. I used to be a consultant in a previous life for a long time. And I can't tell you how many dogfights I got into on campus with the person who thought that if we didn't have that question, how were we going to know how to develop our marketing plan?
Hey, there is something to be said about, if you do have that information, it can help in the anecdotal to say, okay, especially if it's like specific examples, but like checking a box, I found
Website.
Like that, that's not impactful at all, right? So you got to be thoughtful about how you, just like any other question, any other survey question, you have to be thoughtful about how you ask it and not lead the witness. Because if you put all the answers that you want, and then the responses are all the answers that you want, now you got rose-colored glasses when it comes to that perspective. So,
well, the easier answer was, back in those days, I would say then, when was the last time you looked at the data from this really important question on your inquiry form?
Too. Yeah. We ask all these questions because we always have. That's the other higher ed cliche. So way things we've always done it. Yeah. And we complain about the way that's the statement, but yet we keep saying it. So that's the higher ed cliche train we'll get to. That'll be another podcast episode. Let's
maybe for Christmas.
Up on the board.
Yeah, you can have the higher ed cliche train going around the tree for the holiday.
That's it. Fantastic. In a few weeks, that'll be the graphic we put up on the internet. So awesome. Well, Steph, I appreciate you taking the time, as always, to share your insights and perspective. Somewhere along the line, these podcast conversations turned into like historical retrospectives, and I don't know how I feel about that, but it's always great to connect, and we appreciate everyone joining today. What are before we go, last thing is, people want to connect with you, what are the best ways and places for them to be able to do that?
Oh, find me on LinkedIn for sure. Pretty easy. If you can find Gil, you can find me. So go find Gil on LinkedIn. You should be connected to him anyway. And then look for Stephanie Simmons Geyer, and I'm there, and I will welcome that connection and hope that we can have a conversation.
And you'll ask, how did you hear about me? And the response will be FYI podcast, and you'll start tracking that data. So there we go.
And then I'll be harassing you to say, hey, I need to be on the podcast once a month.
There we go. Hey, you know what?
Don't you need a podcast sidekick?
Hey, not against it. I'm not against it. Add that to your Christmas wish list.
All right, Santa.
Hey, you making fun of my beard? All right, everyone. That is enough. Now we're going down the train. The train, huh? We're going down the train. We'll say goodbye, and we will see you next time on FYI.